bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the most read group of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more, all featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL, from the great one to the next one, from the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the THW Oilers Overtime video show podcast. Our regular cast of characters is with us, and we were just talking about this before we hit the record button, that this may be one of the few shows where we don't do all the conversations right before major changes happen, because we're about 5 days removed from free agency, maybe 6 or so, and there's lots to talk about. So we're going to do that right now. Julian Mongillo is with us. Julian, how are you?
I'm good. Enjoyed a weekend golfing with my buddies, swimming at my girlfriend's pool, and hopefully we're not a jinx anymore.
Yeah, well, I just got back from holidays today as we record this. I got off a flight a few hours ago and was out the lake and stuff, so maybe that's a theme here. Brian Swane's with us as well. Brian, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good too. I'm hoping that whatever we discuss here tonight doesn't happen within the next 12 hours or so. So we've called a few shots. We've taken a few bold stances the last 2 weeks, and we're batting what about maybe 333.
Yeah, well, some of them were pretty easy to call. Others maybe not so much, but did wind up happening, and we'll get into all that too. Colton Pankiw's with us. Colton, how are you?
Good. I was at the lake too, so I guess it is a bit of a theme, and just excited to talk about this last week.
Yeah, it's like the only real time that we have a chat, especially this season, right? Because everything is so condensed, and before you know it, preseason's going to be here and regular season's going to kick off in October. So everything is so condensed. When you can, free agency comes and goes in the first 2 days, get out of the way. It's like, okay, go. You've got 3 days to sort of relax, and then you never know what else is going to happen. But the Oilers did a lot. They were one of the busier teams in NHL free agency. We kind of knew they were going to be. Ken Holland tipped his hand to that. There was lots of talk about Zach Hyman going into free agency. They knew when they lost Adam Larson to Seattle, they were going to have to get a defenseman. That immediately steered them towards Tyson Barrie, and then they kind of added another piece. They needed a third-line center. There was talk about the goaltending. So we knew they were going to be busy. I don't know if we knew they were going to be this busy. Julian, I'll start with you. Did you expect this much action from Ken Holland?
I think a while ago when we talked about their offseason, I think I did say they were going to be very busy and a lot of bigger moves made to bring different players in. And I think that's what they did. They had holes to fill and needs to fill, and they went out and checked all the boxes on their list that they needed to address. So maybe just the goaltending might be a little bit of a status quo kind of thing. But other than that, they kind of had their wish list and they got what they needed.
Well, Brian, Holland said that he was going to spend the money. He talked about, and if you've ever seen the crazy math in the middle of a media conference, then watch Ken Holland's explanation of LTI. It's pretty funny, but he said he was going to spend the money because he needed to get that cap up. So we knew he was going to spend it. Before we get into specifics about each player, Brian, I'll ask you, did you like the way he spent the money? General outlook, long-term view. Do you like the way he spent the money?
Yeah, well, first off, I got to give you credit because you called this. You said you thought it was going to be really busy, and lo and behold, you were right. I liked it. I mean, I think I would, if we could go back to the start of this, I would rather still have Larson. But once that domino fell, I think he did pretty well. I don't think he overpaid for Barrie. I don't think he overpaid for Ceci. So yeah, you know what? I can't complain too much at all. I think he did very well in the wake of, everything that went down the previous 2 weeks.
I think you're going to get a lot of people who agree with you that he didn't overpay for Tyson Barrie. In fact, I think he got a bargain on Tyson Barrie. And we talked about that going way back, even a couple months ago, about what we would do if you could get Tyson Barrie at a 3-year bargain deal. The Cody Ceci one, I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched Cody Ceci enough. I remember what he was like in Ottawa. I remember what he was like, or didn't really get to see him in Pittsburgh much. So you might get some polarizing reactions to the overspending on Cody Ceci, but we're going to find out, right? Colton, what did you think? Did you like the way that he sort of rebuilt this roster? Because this is now a Ken Holland roster. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah. His first offseason really with some cap room. Their forward group's obviously a lot better. I think it's the best I've seen any of us have seen in a long time from them. The real question's on the blue line and then in net still. I'm still kind of holding on hope that there's still going to be something done goaltending wise. I know we might get into that later, but overall, yeah, I don't mind it. I think some of those deals, the Hyman one in particular, I think the front half of that'll be good, and we'll just have to wait and see on the back.
So we'll get into some of those specific things now. There were 4 signings. So there was Zach Hyman, which we kind of knew about. There was Tyson Barrie coming back. There was Cody Ceci, and then there was Derek Ryan as a depth center. And then there was a trade. There was Ethan Bear, and we sort of saw this coming too when as soon as Tyson Barrie's name was out there. Let's start with the trade, because I'm kind of interested to see what you guys are thinking, your immediate reactions, because I'm guessing some people are going to be mixed on this. Julian, what was your take on the trade itself? Just one, moving Ethan Bear out in general, and 2, what the return was for the Ethan Bear trade.
Well, we kind of called this, actually one of the things we were right about, I think, was this trade. And we said that if we couldn't get a defensive defenseman that, well, or bring back a defensive defenseman, that we would have to go some route like this, where we couldn't have a whole side of right-handed defensive defensemen. So we kind of did call this, so kudos to us. But in terms of having to get rid of him, we saw it coming. I think we all could, see the writing on the wall. I don't know if he would have fit otherwise, and if the actual management and coaching staff actually saw him as a fit, especially how last year ended in the playoffs there. But overall, I think that it might have been something that can bite them in the butt, maybe moving forward, just in terms of what the return was. I do like the player that they got back in Foegele. I like the contract that he signed, and that he's on a decent amount of term. And I think that he can be a versatile forward that'll, move up and down your lineup. So I mean, overall, it might not be ideal to give up a right-handed shot young defenseman like Bear to get a forward of a top 9 forward, I guess. But I still like the upside overall. And I think the move was necessary in order to have the rest of the defense play out the way it did.
Yeah. Once I heard the words Tyson Barrie's talking to the Oilers again, you knew, right? I mean, how could you not? I wrote an article a long time ago. It's kind of like, there's no way. And we said this numerous times. There's no way the Oilers are going to run with Tyson Barrie, Evan Bouchard, and Ethan Bear. There's just no way. Like there was no possible scenario where that was going to make any sense. You have 3 similar, even though Ethan Bear's not really like Bouchard and Barrie in his offense, but he's not a physical shutdown defenseman. You just can't run that many similar style players on your right side. So we knew Ethan Bear was going to go. I think a lot of people didn't believe that. They're like, no way, they're never going to trade Ethan Bear. They have never traded Ethan Bear up to this point. He's always said, no, that's a non-starter. I'm not going to do it. But then once the Barrie piece fell in, and then the minute he signed Cody Ceci, he was like, okay, Ethan Bear, he's gone. I like Warren Foegele as well. I hadn't seen a lot of him out of Carolina, but I did do some digging after the fact just to kind of learn a little bit up. I really like his game. I like his north-south style. He's fast. He's got some skill. I agree. That contract is pretty good. Brian, what'd you make of the trade? Did you think that the Ethan Bear move was shocking, or were you kind of like, no? And I'll ask Colton a different question after this, but Brian, I'm just kind of curious, like your initial reaction to seeing Ethan Bear get traded, because there was a little bit of a shock factor, even though we sort of saw it coming, right?
With me, to be honest, not at all. It's like,
okay.
I just knew that was going to happen, and it was just a matter of who, where, when kind of thing. I'm with you on Warren Foegele. I knew very little about this guy beforehand. I wrote about him over the weekend, so I did a lot of digging, watched some highlights and stuff on that too, and got a good sense for his game. I like what he brings to this team. We've talked, because like Julian is pointing out, this is one of the things we broke down Ethan Bear's game a lot over the last few weeks. We know what he brought and what he brought to this team, both on and off the ice, and he's going to be missed. But if it was in a position where they had to move him out, I don't know if they got fair return or not, but I really am enthusiastic about Warren Foegele. I was initially disappointed, but that's just because, I just didn't know a lot about the guy. The more I find out about him, he's a great fit. Great contract too, as you pointed out.
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, I'll give Ken Holland credit. He has recognized where there were holes in this forward group, right? Even especially in the top 9, like he knew what was missing, and getting Zach Hyman on that first line and getting Foegele maybe on the third, even maybe the second, depending on where he plays a lot. There are holes that he filled with certain style players that this group did not have prior. And Foegele is a different style. Colton, I'll ask you a little bit of a different question about Ethan Bear. Were you a little surprised with some of the comments that came after the fact? Like Ethan Bear, we knew had some trouble with the overtime giveaway, and then there were some comments made towards him that were totally uncalled for. He did say after the trade, he's like, look, I think I needed to be traded. Like, this is one of those situations where I was going to have a hard time coming back. And he didn't necessarily blame anybody, but you could just sort of tell, like, he was, I don't know if he was saying it because he'd already been moved, and maybe he would have never said it had he not been moved, but there was a lot of comments about the fact that, you know, he just didn't know that he was going to be comfortable or if he could come back to Edmonton under the circumstances of how he left. Were you shocked by that?
A little bit. I think he had just overall a pretty rough year. I know it kind of gets magnified the Winnipeg series there. But I think overall he kind of struggled all season long. So I think the fan base was pretty hard on him, especially because the year before they were kind of praising him. He came out of nowhere as this rookie player. And then at the end, like you said, just that unfortunate and really uncalled for situation that played out. So, I mean, it's tough for me to sit here and to judge how he felt after that. Obviously, he said his piece and so be it. I think good for him that he gets a fresh start. I still think that there's a chance that he becomes a really good player. So I hope this is a trade that they don't go on to regret in the future. Like you guys have said, I've read a bit on Foegele myself, and I think it is a good player. I hope it's not one that comes back to bite years down the road, say like Jeff Petrie did.
Yeah, I certainly feel terrible for Ethan Bear and what he went through at leaving Edmonton. I am a little curious, and I don't want to say, and this is not, by the way, anybody watching this is not me suggesting that Ethan Bear is not telling the truth. This is not really how he feels. But I am a little concerned when I hear comments like that, if he maybe has the mental fortitude to be able to really thrive in this market, because it is a tough market. And if you're going to, I mean, these players we saw with Adam Larsson too, right? We don't know exactly what happened there with Adam Larsson. We do know he went through a lot of personal stuff. We do know that he was traded for Taylor Hall, and there's a lot of talk about that wasn't necessarily the most comfortable situation to try to fight yourself through. It's tough here, right? Like if you're in Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, and these markets, if if there's anything that the fans can harp on, they do, right? I mean, we've seen it, and we'll talk about it in a minute with Tyson Barrie. There's still people that don't love the fact that he's back, even though this contract is fantastic, right? It's a tough market to work your way through. So he might be right. He might have been in a situation where he needed to be moved. And with that in mind, I don't love the idea of maybe giving up on a player so early, but if that's really how he felt and that was his mentality, he might have needed to be moved. Like he might absolutely be right that this was not going to work out. And so it just makes sense, right? You keep Barrie, Bouchard, you get into Ceci, or you get in another defensive defenseman if you're adding somebody else later in this program or this series of moves. And Ethan Bear is the one that makes sense. Julian, what do you make of the Tyson Barrie signing? So I guess there's a couple ways you can look at this. One, the fact that he's back, because some people don't love that he's back, but the deal is really nice. Like it's a good deal.
Yeah. Just to touch on Foegele, I also think he'll help the penalty kill a lot, which is something that they'll need. So that's an added bonus. But in terms of the deal that Barrie got, I think it's a great deal for the team. You know what you're getting in the way that he played last year. I think that if he can give you even a touch under what that was, anybody will be happy, especially for the term and the dollars that he signed to. Maybe the only downside I can see is just that Bouchard will have to wait to get that power play time. But other than that, I mean, applause to Holland, because that's a great deal. And a guy who could put up points like he can, I don't think it's a bad deal any day of the week. And, seeing him struggle in Toronto, I think that because he got off to such a good start with the Oilers in the first season and the way it went, I just think that there'll be more lenient on him than the Toronto market was, because when he was in Toronto, he was brought in to be this big point producer. He was never lived up to that hype that he was in Colorado, and he got bagged on for it. And, the market's already hard enough, and then the media's on you, and then all that stuff unfolded, and it takes you down as a player. I think I'm not even a player, and I know that it's, probably heavy on him. So I just hope that he doesn't fall into the same thing if he doesn't produce the way he did last year. But other than that, I think it's great.
I'm going to guess he maybe unintentionally did himself a massive favor. And Brian, I'm going to ask if you agree with my take here for a second. So 4.5 times 3 is a better deal than anybody ever would have imagined for Tyson Barrie. He leads all defensemen in points during the regular season. He's looking for the home run in free agency. I don't know exactly what happened here, but he definitely obviously didn't find it, or he just really preferred to come back to Edmonton. 4.5 times 3 is a pretty good deal. So what he's done, essentially, whether he did this on purpose or not, he's taken a ton of pressure off of himself. Because if he doesn't perform the way he performed last season, and there's a really good chance that he's not going to get those kind of points again this year, he's given himself some cushion for Evan Bouchard to take the next step, maybe overrun him a little bit in that first unit power play. And at $4.5 million, nobody's going to freak out that they're paying $7 million to a guy who's supposed to run their power play, but he can't or isn't. I think he's done himself a huge favor in that respect, because even if he doesn't live up to last year's expectations, 3 times 4.5 is a good deal. Do you agree that Tyson Barrie, maybe he didn't want to sign for 3 times 4.5, but in doing that, he's really given himself a little bit longer leash here?
That's an interesting point. I don't know. I don't know if people are going to be any less hard on him. I mean, you might be right. I mean, if he would certainly have a target on his back if he signed an astronomical contract, something, up around $6 million or so. I still think the expectation is there. I still think there seems to be a lot of trepidation around this guy, and just a lot of people that point to his success last year and say, well, look who he played with, and anybody could put up points in that situation. I'd like to think that he just sees this situation here as a great fit for him. He enjoys being part of this team. He feels he can contribute, and he feels this is a place he can win. I think we'd all like to believe that's what brought him here and what maybe made him take this reasonable contract. On the flip side of that, some people might look and just say that there weren't any other real suitors out there. So I don't know, but I mean, to get back to your original question, I still think he'll feel some heat if he does not performing just because Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, his analytic numbers people are gonna crap all over him for those. Right?
Yeah.
It's just the way that his game has always been. He's really good at one aspect of the game, and his analytics on the other side have never really been very good. But in his defense, he's always been very good at that one thing he's very good at, right? So he's consistently provided points. Colton, what do you think is going to happen here with Barrie and Bouchard? Julian sort of brought it up here. Do you think that this is going to be a problem for Bouchard, or has everything that Holland has said and the way they moved Bear and sort of worked around Evan Bouchard, is he just the next big thing in Edmonton and doesn't really matter what Tyson Barrie does?
I still think there'll be a bit of a learning adjustment, I guess, if you want to call it that. I think they still view Barrie right now as the number one guy in the power play and all that, their offensive defenseman. Having said that, I think just he doesn't have that roadblock in front of him anymore where he'll be a healthy scratch, at least not yet. Maybe they still bring someone else in, but I don't see that happening. So I think he'll get a regular shift in the lineup this year, and I think just that'll go a long ways. And then from there, it's just how he does in that role, I guess. If he plays well, he's going to earn himself more minutes, and if not, then I guess that's kind of on him. But I still view Barrie this season at least as kind of the guy. But then after that, it can change. And like I said, if Bouchard comes out of the gates flying and gets off to a great start, then that could change even sooner.
So if I'm hearing you right, if I ask you this question, if you had to choose A or B, is it Barrie's job to lose or Bouchard's job to win? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, this season, I think it's Barrie's job to lose still. And I know the Bouchard fans and everyone that Brian was alluding to, really the analytic crew won't like that. I know they're not Barrie fans, but I think this season it's still, after what Barrie did last year, just coming in, he led all defensemen scoring. So, I mean, I think it's his job to lose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. To that point though, sorry, there's not a changing of the guard that's going to happen yet. Bouchard hasn't played much. There's going to be a buffer period here where that's why that 3-year term is even better, just because it gives that little bit of time to get Bouchard up to speed. And if Bouchard does emerge as that defenseman that can play those minutes that Barrie's playing right now, then it's even better. And the best part of that contract is that's a very, very easily movable contract. If the time came where Bouchard's ready to take a leap or take a next step or take over, let's say, as the power play one specialist, that's a very easy contract to move with a short term probably left on it if Bouchard can emerge within the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and Tyson Barrie has no trade protection in that contract at all. There's not a modified no trade. There's not a no move. There's nothing. There's no trade protection in that. So that's a good point. Okay, I'm going to open this to whoever thinks they have. I don't know Cody Ceci's game from last year. I did not watch him very much in Pittsburgh. Does anybody have a read on this guy? Because what we're talking about here is a guy, maybe Julian knows him a little better than a lot of people because of his, fandom for Toronto. And we've seen what he was in Ottawa. He came into the league, he was really good. And then it sort of changed his game over time. And from what I'm hearing, he's sort of adapted and developed into more of a well-rounded defenseman instead of just trying to be the offensive guy all the time. Julian, have you really gotten a good read on Ceci's game lately versus what you might have seen in Toronto? Like, do we know, can he do this role that he's come in? Because they think he's going to be a shutdown, well-rounded guy, and maybe not as physical as Adam Larson. But the idea here is that he's not going to be the offensive guy. He's going to shut people down. Can he do it?
Yeah. So from what I seen in Toronto, I don't know compared to last year what kind of improvements he's made, but when I was watching him in Toronto, it just seemed like he was out of his element in terms of playing minutes that he couldn't play. Cause I'm pretty sure he was paired with Riley for the most part of that season on the top pair, playing these top guys. So he might have the similar role in having to play those top against the other team's top players. But I've seen flashes of him in that period where it was more like defensive mental errors, where it's like positioning and I mean, of course that stuff's going to happen, but it was almost just some complacency of like maybe not knowing the system or not knowing where he was supposed to be just because he was only with us for a year. So that could be part of it too. I think that obviously, like you said, he's not going to be as physical as Adam Larson is. I also heard that he's done a lot of work in Pittsburgh with the defensive coaches there. I think Todd Reardon. So I think that in the role he's expected to play with the Oilers, where Nurse is going to eat a lot of those top minutes as well, and then having to play a little bit more of a sheltered role than he was in Toronto. While the markets are similar, I just think that little bit of dialed back minutes is going to help his game overall. And I think that he can do the job. I don't know if the term and the money add up to what he's going to be able to provide. But at the end of the day, you see a lot of the teams building around that $3 to $4 million range of defensemen, and then having that one horse. So in terms of that, I think that's kind of what the going rate is these days of players like that. So I think he can, at the end of the day, he'll be able to do the job.
Well, he's going to be the wild card for sure. And this whole group of signings, like we know that maybe Hyman towards the end of this might not be what he is the first 4 years. We all know that, right? We know Tyson Barrie is going to give you what he gives you. What we don't necessarily know is how much Cody Ceci's reshaped his game and how much what we've heard about him doing in Pittsburgh last year is what we're going to get. Brian was very confident that this was not an overpay. So, and Holland must agree with you, Brian, because he gave him 4 years at $3.25 million per season. Is there something that you've seen in Ceci's game that you really like? Did you do some digging on him to kind of go, yeah, this is a good signing because it has, like, I'm wondering if it has the potential to be one of the better signings that he made this offseason. It could be one of the worst ones, but it could be maybe one of the best ones. Did you get something out of this that you're like, yeah, Ceci's a good spot for this?
Yeah, I actually did a ton of digging. I got a article will be coming out tomorrow or today when this is up on what the new defensive pairings could look like. He improved a lot in Pittsburgh, and to Julian's point, a lot of it has to do with the position they put him in. He was not expected to play top minutes. He played on the third pairing, but he also played their most minutes on the penalty kill among defensemen. He was giving them about 18 minutes a night on their third pairing, which won't be too far off, I don't think, when he's expected to play with the Oilers. I would say about 19 to 20 minutes. His defensive, his advanced stats for people who, if that's your jam, those improved a lot with Pittsburgh as well. Now, you could talk about it's just being part of is that more a product of him improving or just being in the right system? And I think they go hand in hand, but it shows that if you get a guy and you put him in the right position and you use him properly, then he can contribute and give you what you need. I think the other thing we need to remember too is that the guy is only 27. He's still pretty young. He came into the league very, very young. I think he broke into like 18 or 19, right? He's pretty much a full-time in Ottawa from day one there. Mm-hmm. So I think his game has improved a ton in Pittsburgh. And whether you listen to the coaches, whether you look at the advanced stats, pretty much there's evidence of that wherever you want to look at. And like I say, now it just comes down to, okay, was that just more a product of being in the right environment? Or is it also that he's improved his game? I like to think it is. And this contract is not an albatross. I think at worst he can give you solid 15, 16, 17 minutes a game on your third pairing. And for what you're paying for him and for what is it? It's 3 or 4 years. 4 years, right?
4 years, yeah.
4 years. So I mean, he's only going to be 31 at the end of that contract. I don't think this deal, even if he doesn't quite give you what you need, I don't think it's a killer, but I think he can be that second pairing guy. I think he's going to benefit a ton and absorb and soak up a lot from playing with Keith as well.
Yeah, I wonder if Cody Ceci on both ends of the spectrum here, like on the, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to Chris Russell, but just the way that Edmonton fans looked at Chris Russell. I wonder if on the low end, he's viewed like Chris Russell. When Chris Russell came in here and he was being overpaid and everybody's like, oh my God, all he does is block shots, but he doesn't do anything else. He's flopping and diving and blah. That's what everybody said about Russell. That's the low end, right? So even if you on your low end, he's still pretty useful. On the high end, he's Adam Larson, but maybe not as physical, not as big and as strong. But he gives you what Adam Larson was giving you, right?
Chris Russell is literally and figuratively a poor man's Cody Ceci.
Yeah, I like that. And that's not the worst thing in the world, right? Like you said, 3.225 million, maybe too much, but not so much that you're like, whatever. Colton, what did you make of the signing? Were you like shocked that they would give him that much time? Did you see that they were, targeting Cody Ceci and this wasn't a real surprise for you?
I didn't see that they're targeting him at all. No, again, I know Twitter's a tough place to judge players. We see how Tyson Barrie gets the treatment on there, but I just remember his time in Ottawa and even in Toronto it was hard to find a bigger whipping boy in the league. So I think I've kind of always just had that imprinted when I think of him. I didn't watch him really at all in Pittsburgh, so I don't know what to expect, but to me, it just seemed like a guy last year that was forced to sign a 1-year deal kind of to try and keep his NHL career alive. I could be wrong on that. There could have been other offers, but I just thought the term seemed a little quite a bit. But I will say in Holland's defense here, I think sometimes fans, because I think that was the big thing, was people were questioning the term. And I think sometimes this is what you have to pay, unfortunately, to get players to sign in Edmonton. It's just one of the realities. I think we spoke on it last week too. It's not the best destination of any place you could play in the NHL. So I think the term has been questioned, and I even kind of questioned it a bit, but maybe this is what they had to give him to bring him in.
Well, he did say in his media avail that term was key here. Like he came right out and said he had a couple offers. He had a couple people that he was talking to, and the Oilers came with a 4-year deal. And once he looked at that and then looked at the combination of some of the people that were in Edmonton, it was almost a no-brainer for him. So the term was a really, really big part of that whole thing. So it'll be very interesting to see how this turns out, because your right side is now Tyson Barrie, Cody Ceci, Evan Bouchard, and then whatever they do on, the spare end of things. We'll see if there's a Slater Cuckoo or something else involved here that comes down the line here, because I don't know if Ryan Murray was a left or not, but they were going after him and he signed in Colorado. So we'll see.
Yeah, he should help the penalty kill a lot, and I applaud him for playing in 3 Canadian markets. So good on him for sticking with it.
Well, he's either tougher than we all think, or he's a glutton for punishment. But
I heard he's a pretty quiet guy. Like, you can't get much out of him, so he's kind of just like steady. He'll do his thing and go about his business, and I think that's what he does on the ice. And people might mistake that for just not having passion or something. You know what I mean? So I hope the fans don't get on him for that. But I think he can be that steady presence. And
to your point too, Julian, like, he's been through this battle already. He knows what it's like to live in the Canadian market and play in the Canadian market for five of his 6 seasons.
Yep.
And he's decided to come back to it. So he's obviously been through the wars. He has survived it. And he's like, you know what? Yeah,
why not?
Good. I can handle this. So that's positive.
And not only that, but he knows what he's signing up for, not just the market.
Exactly.
He's replacing Adam Larson, and he knows it, right? He probably knows he's not Adam Larson, but he has had to have said to himself at least more than once, going, this is what they're expecting out of me. Can I do this? Right. And he must have the confidence in himself to be able to say, I think I can. Right. So that's pretty cool too, right? Like, to know that you're filling those shoes and you're not exactly the same style of player as Adam Larson, but that's the role they're asking you to fill. You must be confident you can do it, because you're going to a Canadian market that's crazy rabid, and you're filling a role that a lot of people there don't think you can do. So it's going to be very interesting. All right, let's talk about the big one. Julian, I'll start with you. Zach Hyman. We've had a week to fester over. We've really had about 3 weeks to talk about this one, because we all sort of knew it was coming. You, from your angle, saw him leaving Toronto and sort of got yourself prepped for that, and then coming to Edmonton. 7 years, $5.5 million. has it changed your opinion, the number, the term? Are you more like, no, this is a good deal? Like, I watched his media avail afterwards. Everything that they're saying and doing, he's already working out with Connor McDavid, and so is Warren Foegele, by the way, and Darnell Nurse. Like, he just seems to get it. He seems to fit like a glove. I like this deal. Like, I know some people are going to be all over the 7 years, but the more I see this guy and the more I hear about what, like, I like it. What's your take on it?
I've seen him enough, and he's just a guy you can't hate. He says all the right things. I just think that, like, when he fits, he works hard, and that's what fans want to see from their players. They want to see the passion. They want to see them work hard and be excited. And he said it for a while that he's always had Edmonton on his radar, and I think that he's used to playing with those top players, he knows his role, and that's going to be an easy transition for him to come from Toronto playing with Matthews to playing with on McDavid's wing. And I think just that alone, it's going to make it a little bit easier. And once they get that chemistry going, I think it's going to be a great fit. Like I said before, he does a lot of that grittier stuff where you're on the forecheck, retrieving pucks and getting them to the front of the net or getting them to McDavid to create chances. I'm not worried at all about the term. Like I said before, it's come to the point where GMs are always just, it seems like they're just signing deals and adding term on it because they can't add the dollars to keep the cap down now. So, and then they just worry about it later. And that's just the way the league's going now until the cap starts to go up again. So, it's a worry about that later scenario. And who knows if the GM's even going to be around when that contract's over. Usually they don't even make it that far. So, they're probably thinking it's somebody else's problem at that point. But in terms of the fit now, it's just they want to win now. They want to be competitive, and they've done all the right moves to signal that. And Hyman's one of the best ones that's going to help that.
Well, in reality, his contract's not even scraping the surface of one of the bigger ones that we saw over the last few days here. Like, we're talking about defensemen, the Seth Joneses of the world, Dougie Hamilton's, like, some crazy deals got signed here in the last little while. Like, Dougie's probably worth it, but man, oh man. So when you're looking back at this now and you're going, well, 7 years is a long time, but 5.5 is not that bad. Brian, are you of the same opinion that no, this is just going to work out just fine? They'll deal with the last couple of years later if they have to, but this is the right guy at the right time, the right fit. It was a deal that made the most sense.
Yeah, he is the right time, the right guy at the right time, the right fit. He's definitely all that. I mean, we'll revisit this in 5, 6, 7 years from now. But I think you made the point last week, Jim, that who knows what the salary cap is going to look like at that point in time, right? I mean, this might not be so bad. The AAV at that point in time may not make nearly as big a ripple as it does right now. So, and as Julian said, it could be somebody else's problem too. Somebody else is going to be cleaning up this mess with Hyman and Nugent Hopkins in 2027. But it's not going to be Holland. Holland's going to be on the beach with his 2 Stanley Cup rings, or his two newer Stanley Cup rings. But I mean, that's the philosophy they're going with here, right? I mean, it's like kick that can further down the road. We'll deal with it when it comes to it. The whole idea, the whole objective here is getting the Stanley Cup within once or twice, hopefully within the next 4 or 5 years. And then whatever else happens after that, well, it's like, who cares? If we've got to where we want to get to, then we'll just deal with that mess when we get there. And that seems to be what the thought process is. So for what he is right now, he's exactly what this team needs.
Colton, what's your take on the signing, number one? And two, do you get the sense that this first line is a lock of Zach Hyman, Connor McDavid, and Jesse Puljujarvi, or do you think there's a lot of blending going on? Because the Oilers now have a top 9 that's pretty movable. Like, there's a lot of pieces that can go in and out and play in different spots. And that's one of the beauties of this group when you look at it from afar, is that there's a lot you can do here. What's your take on how this first line is going to look, and what did you think of the Hyman deal when it was finally said and done?
The Hyman deal came around on quite a bit. I know when it was rumored early in the offseason, I was kind of hesitant because of the term, but like you guys have said now, I realized since they're really in a win now mode. They can't just keep affording to have Leon and Connor kind of wait, and then all of a sudden they're going to grow more and more frustrated. So I think just, worry about the term, worry about the later years later on kind of thing. And as far as the lines go, I don't know if I'd say they're set yet. I think they'll want to see how they play together and everything. I think we've seen in the past Tippett likes to juggle his lines and put Draisaitl up with McDavid sometimes. I know that'll probably happen a lot less now that they have more players to fill in on those lines, but I don't think anything's set in stone yet. I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if that is their first line. I think they'll give that a shot, but obviously it kind of depends how everything forms together. But the good news is they have so many different players, like you said, that there's so many different combination possibilities.
Yeah, I'm of the take that just like the Tyson Barrie, his job to lose situation, I think that line is set, but it's theirs to lose. Like if he's going in there, because he signed Hyman to play with McDavid, is my take on this. And something would have to go amiss for that to get split up. So I think that's probably what'll happen. But I agree with you. There'll be a lot of line juggling. There'll be a lot of situational matchups and things that they'll do with their power play and stuff. But I don't see any reason to think that their power play isn't as strong or even stronger than it was in the past. Let's take a total flip-flop here. So we talked about the big deal, probably the big name signing. Let's go to maybe the lesser one, the one that's sort of flying under the radar, the Derek Ryan signing from Calgary. He's the depth center, penalty killer, face-off guy. Julian, what'd you make of that? I didn't see that one coming at all.
No, I didn't really see it coming, but I like it a lot. I mean, I like what he brings. It's a little bit of a factor that they haven't really had that more of a stable presence on their fourth line. I think they've always kind of been trying to figure out who can fit here the best and tinkering with it daily. And I think he can provide some stability there and face off wins and stuff. So I just think that there might still be some tinkering, because I think right now they have it as like Turris is on the third line with according to their depth chart, it's Turris, Cassian, and Foegele now. And then Derek Ryan will slot in with somewhere with Shore and Archibald on the fourth. So, I think that gives you a total different dynamic to your fourth line where it's more of a crash and bang. And that's not something they've always had. And I think it drastically improves their penalty killing because they brought in a bunch of different guys that can do that in Foegele, Derek Ryan, and Hyman now too. So I think they've improved all their areas of their game for the most part. And he's just another piece that should add to that puzzle.
Well, I'm not surprised you brought up Kyle Turris because you tend to like to bring up Kyle Turris. But one of the things that I will say that I like about the Derek Ryan signing, and I've heard and read that Kyle Turris is working his butt off this summer. I think this Derek Ryan takes total pressure off Kyle Turris to play center. I think that they'll plop him in the wing. I think they'll put Ryan McLeod there. I think they'll put Derek Ryan, and I think that Kyle Turris can be in and out if they need to, but they're just going to let him ride, do his thing offensively. He's got a wicked shot. Just take the pressure off this kid, right? Like, he's not a kid anymore. He's been around a long time, but like, put him in a situation where it could really work out. And so I like that, but I'm with you. Like the penalty killing aspect of it, the face-off aspect of it. Good signing, pretty cheap, nothing too crazy. Brian, what'd you think of the Derek Ryan deal?
I loved it. I actually got to know Derek Ryan a little bit way back in the day when he was with the University of Alberta. So, I mean, this is pretty cool to see this come full circle. He really loves it in Edmonton, and for him to come back here, it's a pretty cool thing. I know he wants to be here. He wants to win here. I think fans are going to fall in love with him. I don't know how many people, like, U of A hockey doesn't have a huge following, but I think anybody who did follow it and remembers him from when he was back there about 10 years ago already loves the guy. He's just, you can't have enough guys of his character and personality on the team. And that's just talking about who he is as a person, as a player. He brings, like you pointed out, he provides stability at center that hasn't been present on this team in a few years now in that bottom six role and the face-off perspective. I mean, he was just, I think 2 or 3 years ago, he was top 5 in the league on the draw. So he's, I think that's a need that maybe hasn't been talked about enough with this team this year. And so here they quietly go out and get a guy who can do that. So yeah, I mean, I love it. A lot of it's from a personal perspective, but I think, it's just a cool story to see him coming back. And I think he'll play he'll have a role in what success they have.
Well, and he's also 34, which sometimes people would look at as a negative, but in this situation, he's probably one of those players.
He's a young 34.
Well, he's going to fight hard to play every night, and he's going to probably play almost every night. But I don't see he's going to be the guy that gives you a hard time if he's not playing every night, right? Like, he's going to work his way into the lineup if he can, and if somebody else wins a job from him or what have you, it's not going to be an issue. It's like an Alex Chase on. It's like those guys that come in and out of your lineup, but they don't blink too much. They're just like, okay, I got to be better, right? I got to get myself in the lineup if I'm going to earn a regular spot here. I think Derek Ryan's going to be regular, but I just get this feeling that at his age and his maturity level and what he knows he's supposed to bring to this team, look, if I don't keep playing the way I got to play, I might not be in this lineup every night. And I think that's an okay thing. I think it provides the competition. It boosts those young guys. It really pushes them a little bit. Colton, what was your take on the Ryan signing? I've asked everybody else. I should ask you too.
Yeah, I really liked it too. I noticed because goal total and point total dropped off a bit from past seasons, but with this roster he's joining, they're not bringing him in to do that anyway. Like Brian alluded to, really good on faceoffs, can kill penalties, and if he really struggles, which I don't see happening, but that's a really small contract anyway, so it's really easy to just get rid of if you have to, if he's really bad. I don't see that happening. I think he'll be a really good fit on the fourth line and under the radar signing, but a really good one, I thought.
Yeah, and I guess we'll do 2 follow-up questions to end things off, but we'll go quick. We'll run around the circle here. Julian, we'll start with this one. Do you think the Oilers are done?
Well, I'm not sure how their cap situation shakes out, but I think they do still have some tinkering to do, just some depth stuff, because I think they do have a lot of contracts, space for contracts still. So I think they still have to add a few pieces.
Brian, where's your take? You think they're finished? Did Holland do everything he wanted to do, or do you think he's got more in his bag somewhere?
I don't think he did everything he wanted to do. I know he didn't do everything he needed to do, and therefore I think he's not done.
Fair enough. Colton, what about you?
I'm with Brian. I hope there's more coming here. The goaltending position, again, I know we talked about that a lot, but I'm still hoping there's something that gets done there.
Well, that was my next question, so I'll start with you. We've heard some talk about what they could maybe do. We've heard the rumors about Joonas Korpisalo, and that was shot down very quickly by Ryan Rishaug, that they're not giving away, Koskinen, Samorukov, and at first for Korpisalo, doesn't make any sense to do that sort of thing. We've now heard a little bit. I think it was David Staples and Jeff Merrick on 31 Thoughts podcast talked about Anton Khudobin out of Dallas. I don't know if any of those ones make a lot of sense. Khudobin's 35. He's got a lot of time left on his contract. He's a good goaltender. But again, you never really know. You want to invest in an older guy. Colton, what do you think? Is there going to be something done here with the goaltending, or is Holland just in a situation? It's like all those guys got moved. Kemper went to Colorado. Everybody else signed somewhere else. Are they done?
Well, Kemper was the one I was really wanting, and you heard that they're kind of in on him with Colorado right till the end there. I Khudobin, maybe. Korpisalo really doesn't excite me. I was hoping if any of Columbus's goalies, it'd be Merzlikins, but the one other one I thought maybe was Georgiev with the Rangers. I know there was some rumors that he'd asked for a trade. Apparently that wasn't true, but I still think he has starter potential. And obviously with Shesterkin there, he's not going to get that chance. So I'm curious to see if the Rangers take some calls on him or interested in moving him for a piece before the season starts. That's kind of a guy that I've been keeping tabs on and I'd be interested in.
If he's moved, I mean, there's going to be a market for him for sure. If the Rangers are in on Jack Eichel with Buffalo, I'm going to guess he's going to be part of that deal. Julian, what's your take here? You think the goaltending is going to stay pat the way that it is for one more year?
Wouldn't surprise me, but they just got to find a way to get rid of that Koskinen contract first. So if that happens, then they'll be okay to do whatever. I think they'll do whatever they have to. That Kemper deal just kind of fell through. I think Colorado got a little bit too desperate in the end because they lost all their goalies. The goalie market was destroyed by the time they got to that point in the free agency. So I think they had to overpay a little bit to get them. But in terms of them going into the season like this, I think that it's a possibility. And I think, like we talked about before, at this point, they might be, if they're going after guys like Khudobin, why not just ride out the one more year with Koskinen, then get rid of him and get your guy in free agency instead. And so it would have to be a good situation. I think Ben Bishop could also be a potential fit. I know he's had the injury history, but I think he might be able to be bought out of his contract once he's proven that he's healthy and back into the lineup. So that could also be a fit because they have a bunch of goalies there in Dallas. So I'm not sure in terms of, I think they're comfortable going in like this and then seeing where it takes them.
Yeah, I think with Koskinen, the one thing that maybe we forget and a lot of fans seem to forget is that he's actually a decent goaltender. What he has are these mental breakdowns once or twice, maybe 3 times a game, and usually right at the beginning of the game, which sets you in a really bad mood to watch the last 58 minutes because you're like, oh my God, he totally barfed on that one. And then you kind of go, okay, well, this is what we've got. But he's actually decent. So to trade him for a player that is just as good or not much better and then give up a bunch of assets, it doesn't make any sense to me. Brian, what's your thought? Is there a goaltender out there that is actually that much better than Koskinen that you would really move the assets and make that deal to make it work?
Hey, everybody ready? Stuart Skinner.
Well, you're consistent. I'll give you that.
You know what's really interesting is that the one thing that's kind of a name that's bubbled up here in the last week or so that we hadn't heard mentioned in about 2 months is Alex Stalock. Like, he's still under contract. There seems to be some people that think maybe he could be the backup yet, and he's on a much more better salary. Obviously, they still got to do something with that Koskinen contract, but it's been interesting to see a few people have mentioned him as potentially someone that could still find his way into the mix here. I think I can't remember who was mentioning this last week. I think it might have been you, Jim, that maybe they'll just pull a Dwayne Rollison type move, right, and just roll with what they got to the trade deadline. And if they're in a position to make a run, then they pull the trigger. That would probably be what I bet on it being the most likely scenario right now, because I do think that opening night it's probably going to be the dynamic duo of Koskinen and Smith, or Smith and Koskinen.
Well, yeah, I agree. Here's how I see it too. If you're in a situation with your goaltending where it's a lesser of two evils, it's not that I don't like Stalock, and it's not like I don't like Stuart Skinner. I don't know them very well. I don't know that anybody knows what they're going to do at the NHL level. So if you tell me, or you tell the average fan, and you go, okay, you've got a choice. You've got Koskinen and Smith, who have 2 years in a row gotten you into the playoffs, or you've got Smith and Stuart Skinner, or Smith and Alex Stalock. I think everybody's going to be like, well, just take Koskinen. You know what I mean? Like, how do you ride everything else you've done right now if you're Ken Holland is win now, right? Zach Hyman in a big deal, Cody Ceci, Tyson Barrie's back. You've done win now moves the entire offseason, and then you run with Stuart Skinner or you run with Alex Stalock. I don't know that you're going to that's not an easy sell for the fans in Edmonton, right? Not that Holland cares what the fans in Edmonton think, but that's for that reason I'm thinking Koskinen is probably going to stick around, because unless something shakes loose, unless there's just this magical goalie situation that presents itself to the Oilers all of a sudden, I don't know what's left, right? Like Colton said, you talk about Georgiev, you talk about it, but he's probably spoken for in another trade somewhere, right? The Rangers are looking at something bigger. That's my take, and I don't know if they'll pull it off, but he's going to probably be part of that deal, him and like Capo or something, right? So I imagine he's probably not on the Oilers radar, but we'll
Koskinen still did carry the load when Smith was down. So, I mean, you know, he's done it before. I mean, it was inconsistent at times, but you know what? He gets the job done, and you know what you're getting from him.
Yep. No, but it was a final thought. Colton, I'll start with you. Overall take on free agency. Did you like it?
From an Oilers perspective, or just
or in general? Like, because it was a lot of money spent. The Oilers spent a lot of it. Like, what was your take on free agency, both for the Oilers and as a whole?
Well, for the Oilers, I thought it was pretty good. I think there's still some questions, especially with their blue line next season, but I liked it from their end. And then just from a league's perspective, I thought it was awesome. I wasn't really sure what to expect with the flat cap, and it was like the cap just went up. Everyone was spending like crazy. Tons of guys got signed on opening day, so I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I can't imagine why anybody would have figured that kind of money would go out the way that it went out. Julian, what was your response to free agency?
I liked it too. I mean, you love to see all the switching of teams, who's going where, and I just think that it's a totally different era, especially this year with the way everything's breaking through social media now. It's almost like you don't even have to watch your television. Everything's on your phone and at the touch of a button. And I just think that it's crazy to see how it's developed into, got to turn the TV on to watch Free Agent Frenzy. And now it's all popping up on your phone on all these apps and Twitter and stuff. So credit to those guys for breaking all the news, and just a fun day in general.
Well, it's a pretty funny moment when Derek Ryan got signed and Ken Holland didn't know it. He's in the media availability and they're asking him, so what about Derek Ryan signing? He's like,
we got him. Oh, okay. Cool.
I don't know if I have him. I guess I'll go check when we're done here. Like, he's just like, he wasn't even sure that he'd sign. He's like, yeah, I was talking to him. I don't know if it's done though. It's really interesting. Brian, I'll give you the final word. What was your overall take of free agency?
Yeah, well, to that point too, I don't know if you guys heard probably about how Warren Foegele found out he was traded, right? He was on the ice training with Nurse and Devin Shore tells him when it comes up on his phone. So yeah, it's crazy, right? Different times. But I think I touched on off the top that I think the Oilers did very well once the Larsons, once we're past that they did well in free agency. The league itself, it was just mayhem. And it's like, it's just at some point you just kind of like, shrug emoji. This is just getting crazy. And I did not see that coming. And in retrospect, I probably totally should have. that's the way it is now. But yeah, completely caught me off guard. But it was a real flurry of activity. It really seems to have quieted down significantly so the last couple of days, right? So I think it's just maybe what might have happened over the course of 4 or 5 days in previous years just all kind of happened in 24 hours this time around.
Yeah, I think people had a change of mentality. They're just like, you know what? We got to go for it, right?
Yep.
And everybody's situation was different too, right? Like Columbus lost a bunch of people, so they gave that crazy money to Zach Werenski. Like there was just so many weird deals that sort of like pieces. I still think the Seth Jones deal is crazy. Like just how much they just shipped to him the second he came to Chicago, right? Like I think he's a good defenseman, but I see that like, and then you just saw it repeatedly, like over and over and over. These deals were just going out like crazy. Yep. So it was really fun, entertaining from a journalist and writer's perspective, because there's just so much stuff you can talk about. It was certainly interesting, but this was one of our longer shows, so I'll let everybody go here. We'll say thank you to everybody who watched this. I appreciate everybody tuning in through the busy part of the playoffs, through the eliminations, the drafts, the expansion, all the stuff that we covered. I don't know this for sure, and I'm not going to speak for any of you, but I'm going to guess here over the next few weeks, we might take a week off just because the season has sort of wound down, but we'll see. We like doing this, and I know everybody, I can speak for most of you, I think, when I can say that we like doing this. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll kind of keep everybody posted. But thanks for tuning in. Julian, Brian, Colton, thank you again for sticking with us on almost an hour today. All right, guys, have a fantastic one. Another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. Check out thehockeyraiders.com, all the videos on the YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit the notifications, and we'll talk to you guys later.